Okay. Do you want to address the beginning of it first?
I'd
The
start with
fact that we're human beings and we don't really understand much of this, we delude ourselves into thinking that we have a grasp of where here we are. Think of this. We could be the size of a grain of sand in a hurricane of sand, a hurricane that would cover the entire earth. And we would be one grain of sand in that enormity, and we are the tiniest figures living on this grain of sand. And yet we think that we somehow are in control of something. We're not. We're here by a kind of enormous grace that could just allow us to end ourselves. So when you talk about relationships, to me, always begin with a relationship to oneself.
Mm.
If we don't do that, if we don't follow the Socratic dictum of sui notis, know thyself, the unexamined life is not worth living, from Socrates, that's the great Western tradition, Eastern tradition, the Buddha, they teach the same thing. And they also teach something else. Radical ignorance. We live in radical ignorance. And if you accept that, I know lots of people run away from it because this is how they control their worlds. They pretend to themselves that they understand what's going on. They have a certain little corridor of behaviors.
Well, because it reinforces their position of control and authority over
And it
things,
takes away what? That anxiety that that so many people talk about.
Mm-hmm.
The anxiety, not being sure of something, it throws you, it puts you on a platform where you're on a trap door, and you don't know what's below it. You're really afraid of what's below it. That it's that level of anxiety, and you would feel that physically. So for those who are truly sincere, who really want to transcend this, who don't want to just try to escape at every moment, but using every conceivable method of escape, from alcohol to sex to overstimulation,
any addiction,
any kind of addiction, all of it is dedicated to solving the problem, which is a sense of deep anxiety. It's angst. It's called angst in the existential world. It's a deep angst because there's a physicality to it. You feel every emotion. You may not know. Purple-faced rage is obviously felt hedonically, bodily, right? Every other emotion is too. Even sex is considered to be an emotion. That's how they classify it. So if a person can come to truly accept that he or she lives in radical ignorance, like, I live in the world of electronics. Do I understand any of this? We both know I'm like a child walking around in electronics. It's okay, because even the smartest of us is like the tiny cockroach that we heard about in Watchmen. Remember what he said at the end? The smartest cockroach, or the smartest human is no more a threat to me than the smartest cockroach. I love that. That was cute. But he had escaped because he had become pure energy. Right? That's all he was.
Dr. Manhattan.
Right, he was just pure energy. He took a form for people to see.
Great movie.
Yeah, it's really great. In a lot of ways too, because there's art involved in it.
Yeah.
And especially with the main character. What is his stage name?
Oh, I don't know. The actor? Yeah, I don't know.
It's not really screwed up.
I don't know. Yeah. I know the actor that played the body of Dr. Manhattan was Greg Plitt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was the aesthetics.
Oh yeah.
And they beefed him up to be like, perfect aesthetic ideal, right? Like couldn't get any more built than then he could turn himself into multiple people. But anyway, I digress. Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I enjoy the art of these things too. And they speak to certain points, and they can lead you to a discussion like this, because they serve as little linchpins for people to grasp onto.
Right. Well, certainly, and that's comic book culture, and that's what I grew up with, so I latched
Not the worst thing.
No, I don't think so. I think there could have been much worse things. but within those things, there are definitely the philosophical concepts that could be discussed, played out through the dramas that are made for young boys that are into action and heroism. And
but it's always been that way. For us kids, it was like baseball, and the players in the game. For a lot of us, my generation, a lot of us in the game, a lot of the players in the game were really amazing, great players.
The champions.
When I say a lot, I don't mean, I'm talking about 8 or 10 out of the hundreds that are playing, and some of them just stand above all others, and what they become, depending on your stupid city affiliation, this absurdity of hating another city and the players on the other city. I mean, it just shows you how crazy, crazy human beings are.
Yeah.
And I pointed this out more than once. I love the players. I mean, I love their skills. I don't care who they are. I watch the Yankees and the Red Sox a lot. The players are great players. You know, they do so many things so well, and they're all like, the pitchers are great. The hitters are great, and the fielding is so terrific for the most part. And
I even took that to another level because I grew up obviously around you and my father, both into baseball and martial arts and all this stuff. And I never got latched onto the sport or the ideology of the person playing the sport. I was intrigued by adaptation of the human organism, the process of becoming capable of doing the thing that they do to such a great degree. I became obsessed with that, and I went down that path for a
that's
long
why
time.
you got so good at it, huh? That's interesting. You were not the romantic with it. You wanted to understand it. You valued it, therefore.
Well, yeah. I mean, as a kid, I didn't feel strong, certainly, and I couldn't overcome my indulgences as a kid. So I became obsessive about how I could overcome the bad habits that I had formed, and the way that plays out, the degree to which that plays out when you make those choices to go in another direction, as opposed to, you know, just indulging and being addicted, like we were talking about before, being addicted and trying to overcome the bad feeling through the addiction of the thing that makes you euphoric. You know, in this case it was sugar and sweets, right, for a moment. And I remember asking myself at a very early age, would I value the seconds of pleasure of this thing more than the more permanent state that I obtain from abstaining from that thing? I was like 14 when I started playing with that concept. And so that's when I first, I guess, became more stoic in my life. Put off things that were just immediate pleasure, you know.
Well, that's good, because that's a sign of going beyond a kind of adolescent neurosis. The adolescent, such as myself, who was not achievement oriented, was the kid who could not do his homework. You know, he could not suspend pleasure. And it has a lot to do, I think, in my opinion, with a number of things, including the food. So you talk about sugar, but also your conditioning.
Absolutely.
Is there a reason why you're trying to run away? Yeah.
Well, it also, I mean, to play devil's advocate to my own point, it took me down a path of obsessively approaching the thing that I thought would solve all my issues, and led me away from other things, because I eventually became fairly good at this thing, and therefore it became everything that I was doing after 12 years or so. And so I just obsessively did that and didn't handle the other parts of my life that needed to be handled so well, you know. And I just figured that it would solve all the problems to just focus and become a machine in one way, you know. And it doesn't. You're always, I think you have to find some silly pleasure in not being proficient at a thing, because you're always going to approach something in life that you're not. It could be simple as changing a tire, changing your oil in the car, or, you know, fixing a broken shoe or something like that. You're going to come across something and it's just going to make you upset. You have to let go of it and just say, you know, whatever, this is something new, you know.
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, if I had to be upset about all the things I can't do, then I would just be suicidal.
Well, right. I think a lot of people, you know, they go through this position where They get upset about a thing, and they immediately don't want to blame themselves for being improficient because it would show that they suck at it. And so they defer blame to everything else around them, everything, the environment, the people, the position in their life, and just victimize themselves and then just put all the responsibility that they could just take and say, okay, this sucks, I messed up, whatever, moving on, next thing. And they obsess about it, and they stay in that for a while, and then they continue to interact with other people. And I guess that's the point that I was trying to make when we started this video, is a lot of people are going through that and perpetuate their agony by not releasing themselves from their own man in the iron mask prison.
That's a good point. That's a good way to put it. You're right. Yeah, we are. We I don't separate from the other suffering beings, because suffering will come to you if you want to pretend to yourself that you're somehow, enlightened and all that. I've heard from people. Wait, just wait. And when suffering comes to you, real suffering comes to you, eventually, I hope it's not on your deathbed, because it's going to be a confrontation. You're going to realize that all your life you've been bullshitting yourself. The whole point of what Buddha did was to get beyond suffering. Okay? That's what it's all about. And they found that the only way to do that is to become, a satori bound person. Somebody who's awake to the reality. There are different ways to talk about satori. A lot of people back in the 60s identified satori with being high on weed, because it was a nice calm state where there seemed to be an equilibrium, and weed would do that for a lot of the young kids and younger people with energy. And so it became that kind of pursuit, but it's not necessarily that. You can find satori right in the middle of pain, but it's not easy, in my opinion.
Well, I completely agree with that. A concept that I've been playing with, you can tell me if this is just mad or actually has some legitimacy. I went to Six Flags a couple weeks ago, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, and you go on all these thrill rides that you have no control over your life, right? You strap yourself into a thing that could potentially launch you into the atmosphere, and
that's how I saw it.
Right.
Yeah, and I kept wondering, he's still got to go do that.
At some point, you got to say, or you're just sitting there like sweating from your palms, like, oh no, what's gonna happen to me? And so I play with that concept, like I went into this tube on a ride called Bonsai, I think, and it's a tube, it's a giant water tube, and you have no control over what's going on.
Are you in the water?
Not yet. So you're just in a tube and you lay back like a vampire in a casket, right? You lay back. And you got to make sure your feet are a little bit in front of you and crossed so that you don't hit anything. And you're on maybe a 15-degree angle. And then they hit a button and the ground just goes out from underneath you. And you're flying down at 7 feet per second, right? The speed of gravity.
Well, is that it? Yeah.
7 meters? 7 meters per second? Is that right?
I think you're right, probably, yeah.
So you're flying down.
32 feet.
Yeah.
Was it 34?
Maybe minus some friction from the thing that you're sliding down. But it's only a 15-degree thing, so you're falling. You're free falling down.
That's a steep slope.
Oh, yeah. And so it's...
That's like
maybe it's more. Maybe it's
like this.
Yeah, maybe it's 30 degrees. It could be like 30 degrees leaning back.
Wow.
But it's really steep.
So it's like this.
You have no control.
Is it like this?
Yeah. You have a little higher. A little lower with the feet angle. It's about this angle. You're almost completely vertical.
Wow, like this.
Yeah. And you go.
You're going like
shoot
this?
down.
No, it's not 15. It's way more than that.
Yeah, it's steep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so you have no control. My point is, you have no control over what's happening. You feel, your weight like pulling your.
I was like 75.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 75.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm going in the wrong direction. I'm sorry. I'm going in the wrong direction.
90.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Almost 80, 85
maybe
degrees,
85
something like that.
degrees.
Yeah. Almost full 90 degrees. And so you're flying down.
Maybe not 85. Maybe less. I hope.
I'm not sure. I'll find
Was there any friction?
Almost none.
Almost none.
Because you got water. It's a water slide.
Right. It's excellent.
And it only lasts 3 to 5 seconds, and you're going.
That's a lot. It's a big one, huh?
Yeah.
The
You
reef.
can count it. I mean, I suppose time slows down a little bit because you're going so fast that you feel everything, you know? And so it's, but you see the people behind you coming down too, and you're like, oh yeah, they're flying. But it's, you're walking up, you walk up this thing, and you could have massive anxiety walking up the steps for this thing. It's 50 feet up, at least 5 stories up in the air.
Wow.
Because you have to climb all the way up, and all the way up you could be like, I'm not doing this, and then you gotta wait in line, you gotta watch other people go down this thing. So you have 20 people in front of you, and then you're, It's like, what did they say? If you're in a room in heaven for so long, eventually you'd find your way to hell because you'd be bored. It's like all these people are in the line to go to hell because they're bored with
so
existence.
absolutely right.
Right?
Can't be in the centers unless you overstimulate them so much.
Right. Just
That's
pure
sad.
adrenal fatigue.
That's sad.
Yeah.
That's why I can go look at the ocean for hours, and I can't. I'm going to do that all alone.
That's a thrill. It's close to the same thing. It's almost the same thing when you look at the ocean and then you experience dropping at full speed. It's very close to the same experience.
Yeah, well.
Some of my friends going skydiving.
Yeah.
You do that around once, I hear.
You do that only once.
Yeah.
I wouldn't bother personally. I go back to the tube.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the tube may just give you just as much. You don't need to endanger yourself. Tube is. Did anybody get hurt? Nobody gets hurt.
Nobody gets hurt.
There may be some soiled underwear.
They're and then the water. There was a ride that we purposely didn't go on, that we were a little bit intimidated by because we saw some malfunctions on YouTube.
Oh.
This ride is a hamster ball that 2 people get seated in.
Yeah.
And it has 5 or 6 cables on each side that hold you in place. And it reaches a maximum stretch. And so you have basically a slingshot with you being the stone of the slingshot, and it doesn't let go, hopefully. Well, they were cranking this thing up. You can find this on YouTube. And one of the bands lets go before they release the slingshot. One of the bands just poof. And so now you have one less band. You can't go on that ride, because if all the bands let go on one side and then they don't let go on the other side, you end up becoming like a
burst your brain.
Yeah, it was slinging you in the wrong direction.
If it spins you like that,
and then you
so
smash
much,
it. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Terrible.
You could wind up with a cerebral hemorrhage if you have a weakness. Sure, I could.
So we didn't go on that one.
Good idea.
But the other ones, the roller coasters are fine.
So the tube, what's at the bottom of the tube? Is it water?
It's just a chute of water that you lay in. It goes into it slopes down into a laying position, and so eventually you feel the water coming up at you, and you're just laying down by the end, and you decelerate way before the end of the ride.
And then they take you out.
No, you just crawl out.
Oh, okay.
Just crawl out. But the whole point is, like, you're walking up there one step at a time. At least 50 feet up. You can see everything, and it's just like a steel grate.
So you go all alone on this, huh? Your tube is yours.
Yep. Your tube is yours.
It's like a little coffin.
Yeah.
Like a little water coffin.
Yeah. I do the same thing when I'm on a plane. Because a plane can reach, turbulence at some point. Then the plane's like going up and down. It's
sure,
just like,
you've traveled a lot.
It's just like, plane goes down. What am I going to do? Scream? What am I going to do?
People scream, I think, automatically.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I didn't, may I share with you, we were talking about satori, didn't we? We mentioned that?
Yeah.
And this is not me bragging. This is just a statement that shows that you can have satori moments, and there'll be Zen masters who'll tell you that you actually have those moments throughout the course of a day. You don't realize them because they're not dramatic, I think.
Right.
But I had...
Satori is a flow state, essentially. We talked about it. No?
That's interesting. I don't know. Let me just describe it the way I experienced it. It was a wide awake experience. It was such a wide awake experience that I was perfectly functional. And I'm not functional. Okay? But I'm a pretty good driver. And this is 1961. So I was just getting out of college. I had just graduated. And we were on our way back from Narragansett Pier where we had some beers. I wasn't drunk, but I was quite mellow. And 3 of us. Val was driving his 1936 Volkswagen 4-door convertible, narrow wheelbase, a death trap. canvas top, narrow wheelbase. And I was sitting next to him. Seatbelts didn't exist back then. Joe was in the back seat and he was snoozing, and we were coming down the hill. We're on Route 4 in 4, was it 4? Yeah, and we're coming down the hill. We're going to go through an intersection. There's another car coming, and he's going to go through the intersection just as we are going to go through the intersection. The only thing is he turned and cut in front of us. And we actually went past him, and that's when Val hit the brakes. We had already cleared him, but Val hit the brakes, and even though we had cleared the guy, this is how slow he was in his reactions. He was long gone. Now Val hits the brakes and turns the wheel to the left to avoid the guy who's already 50 feet, 60 feet away. And we go skidding across the highway, 4 lanes, and we go into the other side where other cars stop because they saw this. And at some point I could virtually see the pavement. The car was leaning, and I said, "Don't turn the wheel." The voice was from out of pure objectivity. Don't turn the wheel. I was not in the condition that Joe was in when that was happening. He was screaming for his mother. And Val was 2 seconds late in everything. And I was wide awake. I don't know why, but that certainly awakened me. And it reminded me of what Krishnamurti said in one of his writings. Imagine for a moment that you're standing in a room and suddenly you realize there's a cobra in the room with you. No more distractions.
Right.
Right?
Not thinking about dinner later.
Nothing, no more of your problem, nothing. This is the fundamental project, and it galvanizes your consciousness. So that's apparently what happened that night for me. And that just means that anybody can have that. I would imagine many people do, perhaps under those circumstances, why you younger people go jumping off bridges and stuff like that, right? With bungee cords, right? You're looking for a transcendental moment. Now, okay, I don't mean to sound dogmatic, but basically what is that? It's getting beyond the problems of the world. You're trying to really grab off of that great pleasure. We are creatures that pursue pleasure and avoid pain. And so there we are, we're trying to get past the pain, because basically life, as Nietzsche and Buddha and Jesus and innumerable other wise people have said, basically life is suffering. That's what the Buddha was all about. That's what he saw. And I know lots of people will stick their head in the ground and say, no, I'm having a good time. Wait, give it a little time. I hate to say that, but you know, the Buddha went out when he was in the palace. He was going to be the king someday. He went out and he saw the people lying dead and dying and suffering and starving. He saw that. And he asked his father, "Can you save me from that?" And the father said no, so he quit. He gave it all up. He went out searching. That takes courage to do that. Walk away from being the king to go search for something better. Wow. Because he understood. He was, well, there's so much to say about these geniuses. To me, they're geniuses. That's basically what they are. They're geniuses. You can call them spiritual geniuses if you want, but they awaken and to a level where they are beyond care. You know, as Heidegger wrote, all the world is care, but the authentic is beyond care. And the authentic is the enlightenment. I am not in that condition of satori. Very often, I don't think so, but I mean, there was such a sense of equanimity, but it was not beyond care in the sense that it knew what should be done or not done at that moment.
Right.
Because to do otherwise would be to endanger our lives.
You think it was like a pure
functionality,
organismic function response.
Absolutely.
Of survival.
Survival, right.
The way that an animal would respond to
absolutely. A very in my opinion, very accurate way to speak of it. It comes out of your basic need for survival, and you are fundamentally an animal, and you do what you're supposed to do. You know that you're not supposed to turn the wheel, but guess what? He turned the wheel, and we came so close to tipping over on top of my head that I think that if there are parallel universes, that we're all connected to eight or nine parallel universes, there are the universes where I died that night. Because I know that was such a strong part. I mean, I thought we were done. At some point, I thought we were done, and then we came back over. Maybe in other universes, maybe things are a little different.
How did the car end up after that?
He spun to a stop, and we sat there. The car went dead. He started it up after a minute, and then drove across the highway. It was late, one-ish. Across the highway and parked in a big dirt area on the side of the road, and he turned it around and he sat there. Oh my God, I can tell this is terrible to hold this against him, but he was such a vain person, and he remained that way. Nice guy, I love the guy, but so vain. And he said, I saved us, I really did. He almost killed us twice.